you. Hi. Thank you all for being here. So let's talk about trying to be everything to everyone. Let's talk about burnout. So for this talk in particular, what we're going to do is focus on some of the theoretical and kind of big picture issues around burnout. And then after this, so directly following in 2:30 South Pacific J, there'll be a community discussion. And so what that will be is an opportunity to get into some specific items, all right? So looking at, Q&A, that'll be a great chance for Q&A, and looking at the real world application of what we talk about during this session. So we're beginning with the opportunity to be here right now to talk about some of the big picture items, and then any Q&A situations that you may want to share or talk about in the community discussion. So very quickly, just a little bit about me. I'm very familiar with the security industry, going from just in high school, just calling local BBSs, attending 2600 meetings. I started source security conferences, and I worked at security companies like Veracode. I'm currently at Netography. I have a PhD in clinical and organizational psychology and an MBA, which basically I target that to be able to understand not only the social issues of what happens in a workplace, but the bottom line of a business, too. And so I've looked at depression, anxiety, employee engagement, of course, burnout in technology sectors, and specifically in the security industry. And I'm currently adjunct professor at Norfolk State University, where I teach cyber psychology. And everybody always gives me that, well, what is cyber psychology? Which is basically the intersection of psychology and technology. So studying the impact that technology has on humans. Okay. So let's get to why you're here today, and let's talk about burnout. So what is burnout? We've felt it, we understand it. Let's just get that clear definition. It's clinically defined as a psychological syndrome that occurs due to chronic, emotional, interpersonal stressors on the job. Interpersonal stressors. I highlight that, okay? What may be causing your burnout? It's not necessarily what you applied for when you read your job description, when you applied for your job. It's not necessarily the computer. It's not necessarily something that you may be doing for your work. It's defined as the relationships, the interpersonal relationships, the people, your managers, what may be going on in the relationships in your life. So we know what burnout is. Okay? And I wanted to highlight the interpersonal relationships. So when we're feeling burnt out, we tend to express it in 3 different ways according to the research. And if you're here and you're familiar with burnout, you know about Maslow, and you're familiar with the kind of crowning goal of the way that burnout is defined, of the emotional exhaustion. You're tired. You have given so much. Okay. You're just generally overextended and depleted of your resources. Right? Cynicism, just done with it. Done, I'm angry, I'm detached, I'm indifferent. Professional efficacy. You don't feel good about your work anymore. Maybe you chose this career because you were like, hey, I'm good at this. I like this. This makes me feel good. And now you're like, maybe I feel like I'm going to get fired tomorrow. I stink at this. I am terrible. So I did a research study. If any of you are familiar with Jack Daniel, his research on burnout, I was also part of that research project, and we found that in the security industry, most likely to express burnout responses through cynicism. So something that's unique to the security industry is the most common response to burnout was this cynicism, this disconnect, this feeling of, I just done. The whole place could burn, and I'm just not going to care. This anger, this resentment. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So I wanted to just, these are the definitions when we look at burnout and the way that we tend to express them. And I always find it's important to look at burnout holistically. We're one person. When you're frustrated or you're upset, say at your job, chances are you're coming home and you're mad. And you may be taking that out of your partner. You may be taking that out of your kids. You may be taking that out on your friends. Or let's say you're feeling like you're not doing a good job at work. And then you come home and your partner says, oh, did you do the dishes? Did you do this? And you're like, no. Now you're like, great, now I'm a lousy partner. And then your kids come over and say, I want to play. No, I can't. Great, now I'm a bad parent. I mean, you're just kind of kicking your butt left and right about how you feel. And it starts to have this snowball effect where now you're just completely depleted. So it's not like you're feeling terrible about just the way that you were feeling at work. You're trying to be so many things to so many people, and it begins to hurt you in all aspects of your life. So in a lot of times, your anger or your frustration is often targeted at work and being taken out in so many different areas in your life. So I always want to set things up of when we look at burnout, we're looking at it in that big picture, in that holistic view of how is this impacting your life and impacting you as a person. So let's look at burnout in the security industry in particular. And what's interesting is when a lot of the research that's out there that looks at burnout, they're looking at caregivers a lot of times. You want to look at research in burnout that's on nurses, doctors, caregivers. There's a lot of research out there. Less so in other professions. And what's interesting when we look at the security industry, there is some research out there, but there needs to be more. Right now, there's research that shows that in some studies that 77 to 80% of people in the security industry are experiencing burnout. That means if there's 10,000 people walking around, 10,000 security professionals walking around Black Hat right now, I mean, 8,000 of them, 7,500 to 8,000 of them are burnt out? To me, that is an alarming number out of 10,000 people. So why? What's going on? I mean, you all know it. You probably are living it every day. You could probably tell me more than I can tell you. But what I think is important is to recognize it and to acknowledge it. Because of what we talk about in the next 30-some-odd minutes that we have left is the more aware that you are of the situations in your life that are causing the burnout, the better you're going to be able at anticipating how to manage them and how to solve them. So when we look at, okay, what's in the security industry that is causing these triggers, that is causing the situations in my life? The mental workload, being able to have to respond to things, being able to anticipate things, right? Anticipate these cyber attacks, a shortage in staffing, and this increase in workload. Trying to find your place in an organization. What if you're working in an organization who doesn't even understand the difference between what's going on in security versus IT? Or maybe you're working for somebody who just became a CISO who was brought over, and maybe you know more about the nuances of security than the person you're working for. And that's stressing you out because you're trying to convince them of the tools that you need. I mean, all of these different things that a lot of times the people in the organization don't understand security practices in general, let alone how to support you, let alone how to manage and balance all of the different asks that are coming through. And it's not often appreciated in the organization. I mean, I've even written these things down, yet I've been in the position where we were trying to get a new contract through, and we had one poor, wonderful, but sole security person who had to audit and review everything. And we were in line, and we had to wait, and it was holding up our contract, and we're trying to they wanted to gently go like, could you hurry this up? Could you hurry this up? And I'm going like, don't. This individual is helping our company by making sure that we don't introduce a new program that's going to be vulnerable and hurt the company. And everybody's getting all frustrated because they want to speed it up because it's causing delays. And I even know better, and I'm still, getting tempted to go after our poor security person. I mean, all of these things that we don't understand. And if we don't even understand security to begin with, how can people begin to understand how to help people who are working in the security industry? So if you go online and you look at, oh, okay, what do we do for burnout? And this is what drives me crazy. This is usually what you'll start to find out. Meditate. Get a new hobby. Work less. Take a break. Go on vacation. Great. Yes. So when I get into my burnout, when I'm in like the dark place, like the really dark place, I look at this and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, all right, so work less. So I'm so stressed out right now that I'm feeling like if I don't give it my all, I'm going to get fired. I'm doing a terrible job. So if I work less, my anxiety is going to go through the roof. So I don't feel like I can take a break. Okay, take a vacation. I'm going to spend that vacation checking my emails, freaking out. My boss is going to be calling me all the time. Now my family's going to be really mad at me because I'm spending the whole time checking my emails and doing work. And now I spent money that I probably shouldn't have to take a vacation that everybody's mad at me for. Maybe not. All right? I mean, all of these, do things, do things, do things. Meditate, breathing, new hobbies. We spend money on new hobbies that are going to sit in the corner staring at me. Okay? Yeah, I have a Peloton subscription, and every month it stares at me with that little thing that goes off, and I'm not going to cancel it. It's not going to, I'm not going to cancel it. I'm not going to let it win. But I'm not ready to go and start exercising again because I'm tired. I'm not ready to do it. All right? Eat right. When I'm burnt out and I'm in like my dark place, I'm not ready to go make a salad and happy. I'm sitting there under a pile of Taco Bell wrappers, barely able to function. Okay? Like, I'm not here. I'd love to be here, but I'm not here. So I look for these burnout strategies, and I get these perky, happy, do all of these things, and it just makes me mad. Okay? I know I want to get there, but I read these and I go, okay, fine. You're right. This is good advice. I'm not saying this is not good advice. This is good advice. I don't know how to get there, though. I don't. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I'm sad. I don't feel good enough about myself to even go get there. So what do I do? What do I do? How do I get there? Help me. Help me get there first. Because this is where I'm at. Okay? This is where I'm at. So what do I do? You tell me to do this for my burnout, I'm with you. But the fact of the matter is, this, in the long term, feels good, but it doesn't make me, I know I'm not solving my problems. I know I'm not really doing the things that get me to where I need to be. There's a short-term solutions. I know this because when I'm 30 pounds heavier and recovering from a hangover or whatever it is, I know I'm just making myself feel worse, so I got to get to the good place. But how do I get there? So we'll talk about this, so this will come back up, but as a shell, we've got what I call the burnout taxonomy. Because it's a process. You don't get from, I'm eating my feelings and barely functioning, to, great, I'm just going to go eat healthy and be fine and take a break and go meditate and become all zen and great overnight. I mean, maybe you can. I can't say no one is. And if you do, please, by all means, tell me what to do. I'll trade. Come up here and I'll trade with you because I'd love to hear it. But I call it survival because a lot of times that's what you're doing. Sometimes you're so burnt out and you're just in such a dark place that you're surviving. And you're surviving as a coping mechanism. That's where you're at. So how do we get to that? The relief, and what we're calling self-efficacy, which I'll go over. Okay, so let's talk about the first step. Now I know many of you are here today, and you want me to tell you, this is what you do. And it's a magic panacea, it's a pill, it's a statement, it's a thing, it's something you can do. I'd love to have that, I really would. So don't get mad at me, but I don't have that. Okay? But this is what I do have for you. So what the research shows in terms of what's the most effective for solving burnout. So social learning theory and self-efficacy. And so what does this mean? And so what this means is that the more that you learn about yourself, the more that you enhance your awareness, the more that you learn about your responses, your triggers, your beliefs, your narrative, the more that you can be better at managing it. Right? Because when you get into some of the situational factors, so some of those, the Band-Aids, some of the like, oh, well, okay, if I just get a new boss, or that coworker who doesn't do enough work and drives me crazy, some of those situational factors can change. But it's not, sometimes it's just a short fix. And then maybe you change jobs, but there's new things that burn you out. And you may find that the same patterns are happening in different places, not always in the same way. Like, for me, I know my anxiety triggers, and I know, like, for me, it's usually the emotional exhaustion piece. For me, that's just going to happen wherever I go. Now, sometimes it's situational factors. You have a toxic work environment, a boss, and we're going to talk about that too. And when we talk about awareness, it becomes, is it something that I can control? Is it something that's out of my control? And how do we get that awareness to be able to take those next steps? But one of the things that is important, even though the social learning theory and self-efficacy, it may be asking you to do the work of recognizing the situation in yourself and recognizing what you can control or change. I am at no point saying that burnout is your fault. And I think that that is really important to acknowledge. There's a lot of lousy situations and toxic workplaces and poorly managed situations and so many negative situations that are out there that can cause burnout, that are frustrating, that you feel helpless about. That, not just helpless, but angry, rage, frustration just keeps you up at night stewing because you're so angry, because you were putting so much into your work and you want to be heard, you want to be appreciated. I mean, so many things. And then here I am coming along and saying, well, if you only just changed your narrative about how to do it, yeah, okay. I get it. I do. But that's kind of also the rub of it. And so let's talk about that. But I do want to be clear, that asking you to do the work, but asking you to think about what you can and can't change, it's not saying that it's your fault, that somebody's poor management or somebody's toxic work environment, that asking the way that you respond to it means that you're the cause of it. But it's looking at what you can and can't control. Because that's the thing, is that at the end of the day, you are impacted by what you can and can't control. If somebody is a poor leader, and you can make those recommendations, there's many times where I've gone into a work environment that I've been brought in, and they say, go fix my team. And I have to turn around and say, okay, but are you willing to also change? Because unless you as a manager are willing to change, there's only so much that I can do. And if the answer is no from that manager, then I'm limited. And then I usually will say, well, okay, fine. And I've worked with the team, and I tell you the last team that I worked with, what happened was, I worked with the team, they built up their confidence, they managed their burnout, and then in that particular situation, some of them found new roles. Some of them made their own peace with their work and found a happier place, and they were able to manage it. But it never actually came to a good fruition and became the potential that the team could have. But the staff was able to at least find a place where they weren't angry and resentful and in, again, that dark place. Because we need to look at what we can control. Because when you're angry, when you're up at night fuming and raging, you're suffering, you're hurting. The sad part is, if you're burnt out and it's your poor manager, or there's a situation, they may be sleeping no problem. You're the one hurting. Sorry. You're the one hurting. You're the one being angry. It's your relationships that are in pain. And that's the sad part of it, is that it's your situations in your life that are in pain. And so we have to look at all these things of how do we respond to them? What are the triggers? So if you've got, say, a manager that you're not getting along with, or a coworker, what is it about that? And start pulling on these threads, asking these questions. What is it about it? Okay, why does this frustrate me so much? And these are hard questions to ask because they're hard to answer. I don't know, it's the principle of things. I come to work every day from 9 to 5. This person shows up at 10 o'clock. They show up late every day, meaning I have to do more work, and that's not right. You're right. You are right. But you're the one who's being angry about it for good reasons, and you're the one suffering. And this is what I mean. the answer, the right answer, what I wish you could say is, you know what, you're absolutely right. That person should show up at 9 o'clock, if not early, take on their job. But we can't control that person. And you're in the cycle. And this story, when I talk about like your mental script and narrative, how many times do you go to bed, or you're sitting there thinking, just telling yourself the story, oh, they should show up in time. Oh, and you ruminate over and over and over and over and tell it in your head. You're mad and you're doing it. And what can you control and what can't you control? So let's take a look at just some of the real world examples here. So, okay, so let's say this. You've got a whole bunch of work to do. You're feeling frustrated. Work is behind, right? There's the emotional exhaustion piece. So your different responses. Okay, I'm going to stay late. I know I stayed late before, but I want to push myself as hard as I can and do everything my boss asks for me because it's that feeling of validation. I'm going to push myself so hard. Cynicism and anger. This is poor management. If I had a good manager, things wouldn't be so backed up. The heck with it. I'm just going to leave. I don't care. Not my problem. They're a poor manager, and I don't need to give any, and the heck with them. The professional efficacy. I used to be good at this. I used to be able to do this task and enjoy it. I can't do this anymore. I don't think I'm good at my job. All of these emotions that you're feeling, however you choose to express it, however you may identify with it. Right? These may be familiar situations. These may resonate. They may not. So it becomes about asking yourself, okay, so this is how I'm responding. For valid reasons. And again, everything that you're feeling about burnout is valid. But asking, why am I doing this? Why am I pushing myself so hard? What do I need here? Why is it that when I get a message at 9 p.m. at night, I feel the need to reply? What's pushing me to do that? The cynicism. So when was the trust broken? Why are you angry? Where is this? I don't care if the whole place is on fire. And so this one is hard. And I want to be clear about the difference between boundaries and cynicism, because this is the emotional piece. It is, when you say a boundary of, I'm going to work my 9 to 5, because I need to do that for me, because that's the agreement, we work 9 to 5, it's okay, boundary. I'm going to work 9 to 5, and I don't care if you need anything else, because you suck, and that's it. And it's this emotional piece of where it's coming from. And if you've ever been around also cynical coworkers, the ones that vent, the ones that are angry, the ones that, if you've ever been next to a toxic employee. I worked with a group one time, and there was just one employee. He was so cynical and so burnt out and so angry that anyone who would basically stand still for about 5 minutes, he was telling them how terrible it was to work there. And so it became a very toxic work environment, because even the people that were trying to be more positive about their work environment and trying to work it out, he would be right there, just angry, 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 angry. And so it's trying to set boundaries and what would it take to not be angry and to free yourself from that? Because again, it's that you're the one that's suffering from that anger. You're the one that's bringing that home. Again, not your fault. There are things at work that are making you angry. There are things in situations that are making you angry. But what can you do to help remove yourself from that anger and find that peace from that? And then again, the professional efficacy of when will you feel good enough? Is it imposter syndrome? When did you feel valued? What would help you feel valued? So whatever it is in the way that you're expressing burnout, what can help pull relief in this? So our taxonomy, okay? So whatever it is when you're looking at, this is how I express my burnout. So identifying that first. So let's say we're down here in our survival. Okay, we're eating our feelings, we're drinking whiskey, we're listening to Slayer, whatever it is. We are miserable. So the first thing that I recommend to do is take a second and think, I'm aware of it. I'm burnt out. This isn't okay. What's going on in my life right now is not okay. That's it. Just stop there for a second. Right? Forget the do's, forget the shoulds, forget the whatever, right? The awareness of it. And I can do something about it. And stop there. I really stay away from the do's and the shoulds right away. One of the things that I always remind myself is as soon as you start getting in your head, I should do this, I should do that, you should all over yourself. Okay? Do not should all over yourself, because you're down in your survival. And we beat ourselves up. I should be doing this, I should be doing so much more. Or, they should be doing this, they should be doing that, they should be doing this. Wherever your anger is, wherever it's internal, external, your sadness, it's there. These emotions are valid and they're real. And the thing with emotions is who wants to feel bad? I don't want to feel bad. And when we deny ourselves the ability to just sit there and be aware of it and say, I feel bad right now. That's hard sometimes, to just sit there and sit with that. We don't like to sit with things. Okay, so I'm burnt out. This is not okay. My life is not okay right now. I am not okay right now. I am not happy. I am lying here on the floor with 22-liter bottles of Mountain Dew, 5 bags of Taco Bell, and 3 bags of Arby's. Don't judge. Okay? And this isn't where I want to be. Now, don't get me wrong, there's been times where I'm like, yes, I've got all my bags of Taco Bells, and I love Arby's, and I am happy as a clam. There's no judgment. But I'm in a good place about it, because it's a happy choice. But where do you want to be? Okay, this isn't really where I want to be right now. Where do I want to be? What do I want to do? What's going on? So that awareness, right? I can be the catalyst for change. This has to change, okay? I'm going to make change happen. Don't go crazy. Don't start committing to things you can't commit to. Don't rush it. Because I think when you rush it, when you start like, I'm going to go to the gym, and I'm going to run 5 miles a day. Like, I don't know, but if you've ever, guilty here, started a diet plan and then failed it like 20 times, you just feel worse sometimes, right? Like, set yourself up for success, whatever that may be. And it can be baby steps, but set yourself up for success in that. And begin to understand it. And so this is why I was pushing the asking questions, like, okay, why am I doing this? What do I feel? Do I like this? Begin to understand it. So as you go to understanding it, then you begin to find the relief because you understand it. Okay, when this person does this, it's really going to make me mad. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go do something differently. I know that's going to trigger me when they do this. Maybe I'm going to go sit somewhere else. Maybe I'm just going to take a step away, and I'm going to schedule time at that meeting that we have every day really makes me frustrated, so I'm going to schedule 15 minutes afterwards to take a break and not do back-to-backs. I'm going to start coming up with the awareness of what happens. I'm going to look for patterns and try to manage what frustrates me. And then eventually I'm bringing it up to what we call that self-efficacy, as I mentioned. So that is the knowing of your worth, being able to anticipate, being able to have that awareness. Because that's what the research shows is the best way to managing burnout. Learn yourself. Learn yourself, learn the situations, to be able to basically go jujitsu on that stuff, right? Like, oh, I see you coming, dodge it, got it, move it back. I mean, it's just learning the situations. Now, this doesn't mean that if you're in a bad situation that you can't just polish off your resume and say, this is not working and we need to end this. Okay? I mean, you know your life, you know yourself, you know your world. But like any relationship, you have a relationship with your job, you have a relationship with your family, you have a relationship with the people in your life. And in your life, you do have experience assessing the relationships. Is this relationship worth it to me? Am I getting what I need from it? Should I be in this relationship? Your relationship with your job is the same thing. It takes work, it takes communication, it takes understanding, it takes change. So some of the quick advice and tips, the quick and dirty ones. Knowing your limits and your goals. What are your goals? What do you want to be? What does happiness look like for you? What do you want from your job? You may have big overall career paths that have nothing to do with the job itself or your company. But if you don't know what it looks like, how will you know if you're there? So just something to think about. What do you want? What does it look like? So I know when I am overextending myself and I'm trying to get approval, and I'm like, well, what does it look like? You know, if I'm thinking like, oh, I'm going to get fired if I don't answer this text message that comes in at 9 o'clock. It's like, well, wait a minute, is that really true? What does it look like to be good at my job? Am I just letting the anxiety get the best of me? Possibly. Ask for help. Now this is a big one, because a lot of what I've told you, and I'm up here and I'm like, oh, just go ask yourself these questions. A lot of this does benefit from professional help, okay? Either through coaches, and I'll talk about that through professional help, coaches. Ask for help, okay? You can benefit from that, from working that through, from helping with that awareness. Know your triggers. Again, know your triggers externally and internally. Sometimes we are our own worst critics, that we criticize ourselves. Know your inner critic. Tell it to shut up if you have to, right? Like, be able to know, like, I'm doing that thing right now. Please stop doing that thing, right? Like, being able to be able to traverse the paths and the situations. Setting the expectations about what's being asked of you. And I love this idea of this 42% rule, right? That 42% of your day should be spent resting and doing something stress relieving. I don't know who came up with that exact number. I mean, I do, not personally, but in terms of like, that's what research shows. But I don't know anybody that actually spends 42% of their day just taking care of themselves and self-care. But I love that idea. Right? Like, you know, and sometimes, but I'll look at that and I'm like, wait a minute, okay, 42%. Let me do the numbers, where am I at? Right? I am not even close to 42%. Like, I wake up in the morning and I get my kids to school, I go to work, I go pick up my kids, I get home, and then I have 2 hours a day and I play some video games. Yeah. Which is fun. It's not myself, I wouldn't call that self-care. That's more like, I'm just vegging out, I'm decompressing. Kind of self-care, but to bring it to, does it energize me? That's a tricky one. I love my video games. Fun. But that's more of like, I just need to like chill out for a minute. There's a couple of things, and I'm still on the quest for this, but like, what's something that gives me satisfaction, that makes me feel like, yes, this makes me feel awesome. When I do this thing, I win at life, right? Like, do we have that? I'm struggling to find that still. There's a couple of things, but because sometimes we don't find our self-worth from work. And when I started my career path a long time ago, it was, well, if we're going to spend so much time at work, I want to learn about employee engagement and all these things, because if we're going to spend that much time at work, we should love what we're doing. We should feel validated by it. We're putting all this time and all this effort. We spend more time at work than we do anywhere else, then we should love it. It was a long time ago, and I was very naive. But I still kind of believe that. I do. I do. But if you can't find that from work, if you're not in an opportunity for that, if by the nature of the security industry, by the nature of the work environment that you're in, whatever it may be, but is there something that energizes you, where you can say, you know what, this is my job, this is the situation, I need to put a little fence around that and say I'm going to do my work, I'm going to leave at the end of the day, and then I'm going to go do my hobby, and that makes me feel awesome. Or I'm going to go hang out with my friends, or I'm going to go be with my family. Whatever it is, what energizes you. And bringing that back to what do you want? And celebrate it. Take pleasure in the small things. Your job is important. It is. You are important. But find yourself in your life. Your work doesn't have to define you. It doesn't have to define your happiness. And as cliche as it sounds, and cliche in the, find your happiness and defend it, and like I said when I started, I would love to have some magic solution for you that says, this is what you do if you go do these 5 things, this will reduce your burnout, and everybody leaves and comes back and I see you next year and you're like, hi Stacy, I'm really happy now and I'm not at all burnt out. That would be awesome. I would love that. Sorry. I'm not here to tell you that part. But it is there. That I can tell you. That I can tell you that I believe that every single one of you can walk out of this room, do the work, and find the happiness and protect it in the way that you choose. That I do believe. And I'm very happy to go and discuss that with you, if you would like, in the session following after this, because I know we only have a couple of minutes, which doesn't leave much time for Q&A or anything. But I'm more than happy to discuss that as well after the conference itself. Bringing us just to the last time of resources and tools. These are all tools that can help you actually even just applying some of what I've talked about today in terms of professional therapist. That will always, in my opinion, be your best bet. I mean, this is what they do. They are trained to help you go through and pull on those threads and ask you those questions and say what makes you happy. And if nothing else, it's like a whole hour just to talk about the problems that are in your life and help you figure it out. And now with teletherapy, that does help make things easier because you don't have to leave your house. I like that. I don't want to leave my house. Life coach, physical personal trainer, self-care coach. I mean, all of these things. There are opportunities, there are resources that can help you, but so again, tying it back, it can happen. There are ways to reduce burnout. There are situations, again, I do have compassion and empathy of, you're putting a lot into your work. I think if you're here in this room, chances are you're in pain. You're feeling the frustrations. You're not getting what you are putting into your work environment. You're tired, you're angry, you are a wealth of emotions right now from your burnout. And you don't have to be. You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be. You don't deserve to be. And so I hope, if anything, as you walk away from this talk, that that's something that you can sit with, that you don't deserve to be burnt out, but that each and every single one of you, and whatever it is, can find a way to not be, whatever the choices are. But first, just to even sit with that and say, I don't need to be. Okay, let's start with that. And then decide what you want to do and where you can go from there. So thank you.